All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. Mitt Romney lost the election, but he may have made history. Here's why. His loss could go down as the last presidential campaign to bank on the white vote for a win. In a moment, evidence of why that is a losing strategy. Let's get quickly to Al Cardenas and Patrick Millsap. Al's the president of the American Conservative Union, and Patrick is a Republican strategist and former Newt Gingrich campaign chief of staff. Okay, first to you, Al. Are whites the new minority here in America, especially when it comes to elections?
It will be soon. When Ronald Reagan, our gold standard, won in 1980, it was 87% of the vote. This year it was 72% of the vote. It'll be 68% of the vote in 2016, and by the 2020s, it'll be a minority vote in America.
Yeah, I'm going to give more specifics about that in just a moment. I'm going to ask Patrick the same question. Patrick, what do you think?
I think at first we have an outreach problem. We're banking on votes that we don't necessarily put in the bank, and we are counting on votes that clearly aren't necessarily being there. We've got to work on that.
It's interesting. My question, though, do you think whites are the new minority, especially when it comes to politics now?
Well, I don't want to agree with your premise of this adjective voting block, this monolithic voting block. Yes, there are. You look at percentages of whites, you look at percentages of blacks. The more interesting numbers is when you drill down is income level, taxable income, those type things. Those are the more interesting numbers to me, evangelicals.
All right. Okay, so gentlemen, let's talk about the GOP's future here, all right? I want you to consider this, and Al talked about it just a moment ago. 1980, Reagan beat Carter, 56% of the white vote. Mitt Romney lost with 59% of the white vote. Here's why. In 1980, whites made up 88% of the electorate, 88% in 1980. Tuesday, they made up 72% of voters, so the math simply doesn't work anymore. Al, I wouldn't be going out on a limb here to say that the GOP has a minority problem. I've heard lots of people say that. Does your party have a future in national elections if it can attract more non-white voters?
Well, if it can't, it's not just political malpractice. It'll be political suicide. We just need to do a better job. And as I tell my friends in both the center-right and the conservative movement, we don't need to change our values. We believe those are winning values, but we need to make a long-term commitment and a real commitment to minority communities. We can't lose the Hispanic vote 4-1. We can't lose the Asian vote 4-1. We can't lose a black vote 9-1. You start out with a premise that requires a 60% plus vote of white America, and that's just not going to happen as it declines in population. These are winnable votes, but we just need to pursue them. And frankly, I've been there. I've been chairman of the party in Florida when we used to get 60% of the vote from Hispanics and a larger percentage from African Americans. But you got to have a game plan. You got to have the dedication and resources and the commitment to show up, show respect, and be there at all times. And I think it can be done. But frankly, we need to change the scope of our energies and the scope of our commitment.
So maybe it's a messaging problem, like Patrick just said. I mean, with the conservative, is it conservative views or is it, the messengers or both? What do you think?
Initially, it's the message, because we have this tendency of telling people what we're not going to do. We don't tell them why. We say we're the party of lower taxes, but we don't say because we want people to be able not to be addicted to government, but be able to make make a living. I mean, people, Newt got a big controversy about talking about food stamps. Well, one of the things food stamps represents is a lack of freedom, because that's the federal government. People, they tell you what you can spend with those food stamps. Mm-hmm. You can or can't buy it. We don't do a positive message of saying we want you to have more freedom.
I was just going to say, when you talk about food stamps and those sorts of issues, though, and are those issues or messages that you run on that are losing messages? Do people really want to talk about that when you focus on issues like food stamps or entitlements? Al, and then Patrick.
Yeah, well, listen, we live in a different era, and one that requires us to do a better job, as Patrick said, in messaging. But remember this, I think the president won by offering free stuff. 80% of Americans knew that we had fiscal troubles, and they knew that we needed to rein in our overspending. But when you asked them about Medicare reform or Medicaid reform, 70% said don't touch it. When you asked about budget cuts, they didn't want to touch it. So majority of Americans in this election cycle in particular understood the problem. They didn't want to take the medicine. We need to do a better job in conveying the need for that kind of action. And we need to be, frankly, persuasive.
When you talk about Medicare and Medicaid, let's just be honest. When I was in Ohio and I interviewed people from the Romney team and from the Obama team, and people would talk about entitlements, and they, no one wants to touch Medicaid, Medicare. That's just not minorities. These were older white women who said, hey, listen, I just got Medicare, I just got Medicaid. And so, so it's not just a minority issue, Al.
Oh, no, I didn't say it was a minority issue. We transcended.
And it's not just a Democrat issue.
I was asked a question about what cost us to lose this year. We had mainstream Republicans, conservative Republicans, a majority of independents, and we lost by 20 points or more those who made $50,000 or less in America, including everybody. Mm-hmm. And we won the vote of those who made more than that. Yeah. And so if we need to do a better job of addressing these challenges in a way that more people want to buy in, and I'm not just referring to minorities, I'm referring to America in general. The problem with minorities, frankly, is a lack of dedication of resources and time and scheduling to address them, and that's a basic problem.
See, this is not an attempt by the Republicans to do something and fail. This is the lack of the attempt of the Republicans to do anything at all. Yeah. The first state race I ever worked on was the United States Senate in 1996, United States Senate seat in 1996, and I asked, very naively, why don't we go to black churches? Well, they'll never vote for us. Why don't we retreat to students and young people? Those people never vote. Well, here we are in 2012. That's a completely different story, and we need to make the attempt.
Yeah, but I heard Al say, President Obama won because he promised free things. Did you? I don't want to misquote you there, but I'm not sure if that's promised free things. When I hear people saying that people voted for President Obama because they wanted things, why else do you vote for a candidate if you don't want something from that candidate?
Let me tell you something. Obama won this election. Let's everybody back up and calm down. Obama won this election because he has learned how to do micro-politicking. Right. Republicans are stuck on macro politicking. We keep spending hundreds of $1 millions on TV when most people are getting their news from Twitter and all this other stuff. We are not running a modern campaign.
And you're absolutely right.
Well, look,
from being on the ground, hang on now, you can respond, but I just want to say this before you respond. I think what you say is right on, because being on the ground, everyone underestimated the Obama ground campaign. The Romney people were calling people, automatic phone calls, pick up and say, hey, we need you to support our candidate. The Obama people had offices in those communities for years, and they were going out, I see you haven't voted yet. Yep. If you go and vote, we'll take your name off, or we'll find a way for you to get to the polls to go vote. They were talking about GOTV and volunteers. I'm like, what are they talking about? Yep. And then it finally came into like, they're actually getting people to the polls and reaching people personally, Al.
Right. Let me say this. President Obama received 12 million less votes this year than he did in 2008. Mitt Romney got almost 3 million votes less than John McCain did. This election, you could come up with a lot of arguments as to why Mitt Romney didn't win. I thought he left it all in the playing field. I thought he did as well as he could given the circumstances. But the truth of the matter is we couldn't come up with enough votes to win. And if you analyze this election, you can come up with 100 reasons why Mitt Romney lost. I'm looking towards 2016 and how can we, the GOP, continue to be competitive, and how can conservatives get their message across. And so what I'm trying to tell you is to echo what Patrick said. The first thing you got to do is show up. We didn't show up in the black community. We didn't show up enough in the Hispanic community. We dedicated resources too little, too late. And we need a long-term plan that dedicates enough resources to become competitive, knock on the door, and do the things that we need to do that community. Now, my comments about what won or lost this election are different than the comments about what's required to win the minority vote in the future.
Well, 2016, let's talk about that. What does the GOP do then? I mean, do they just go, hey, we've got Marco Rubio, and I mean, how do you, in 4 years, what do you do honestly?
Yeah, well, we started in 2010 by recruiting great candidates for statewide office, and they won. Marco Rubio, Susana Martinez, Brian Sandoval. We've got 2 governors. Democrats don't. Marco is the senator. Ted Cruz just got elected senator. So that's a good thing to do, continue to recruit surrogates. The second thing we need to do is to make sure that the RNC and these campaigns are equipped with the right staff that know the Hispanic community inside out. And then the third thing they need to do is dedicate their resources so that we don't get outspent 4 to 4-1 and 5-1 by the Democrats and the Hispanic media and the minority media.
I want Patrick to get in here because, Patrick, it's not just about the candidate or putting a candidate that has a, an Hispanic-sounding last name or a minority on the ticket. You said you not only have that problem, but you have
an angry white man problem.
An angry white man problem.
And that's I don't want to discredit Marco Rubio for just saying that he's a up and comer because he's Hispanic. He's an up and comer because he can look in the camera and express a conservative viewpoint without saying anger, without sounding angry, and quite frankly, without saying the word rape. I mean, he connects with people, and so the fact that he is Cuban American is a plus, but it's not the primary reason he's such a good candidate.
What do you mean you have an angry white man problem? Expand on that for me.
The GOP has a problem of we get candidates in line and we'll put them up and saying, oh, it's his turn now. It's his turn now. And these tend to be, at this point, older white guys. Quite frankly, we need to be looking at the broad spectrum of candidates. I mean, right here in Georgia, we have a former county commissioner named Ashley Bell. He's a former Democrat. He's a black Republican, and he's a good candidate not because he's black, but because he can articulate the conservative message without sounding angry, without ticking off all women, without ticking off millennials.
Yeah. And it's issues as well, because there were things in this campaign that I heard leaders of the GOP saying, you know what, people don't care about that. Women don't care about these issues. People don't care about these particular issues. Yeah. And it seems that maybe they do, because those people turned out women, minorities in droves for President Obama.
Well, the two things I want to mention about that is, look, 80% of the money spent by both sides was spent on negative ads. I think that was the main reason 15 million more people stayed home. And frankly, I thought 30 million more people are going to vote than voted. And I thought that was because neither side inspired them with a positive vision as to what tomorrow should be all about for our kids and for our grandkids.
I have to run, but just yes or no. Do you think the GOP is tone deaf?
I don't think it needs to be tone deaf. I think we've got every reason in the world to become very representative of the American people.
At this point, is the GOP tone deaf? At this point,
we've got to stop whining and get to work.
All right,
like Monday.
Patrick, Patrick and Al, thanks to both of you. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
All right.